Okay, guys, sorry my video hung up on you, but that was my lost story part one. Let's go with part two now. So where we left off is we were talking about the name of our second baby. So after and when I say she, I mean the ultrasound tech said, "Hey, I think you are having a boy, but I can't say for certain." And they showed us the picture, and I had the dream about sunshine. I start looking up names that mean light, and I came to the name Aiden, and Aiden means little fiery one. And I was like, oh my God, Lord, I know this isn't exactly light, but this describes this baby's personality, because every ultrasound, every picture I saw of this little guy, he was moving. He was very, very fiery. So I said, okay. And I said, what about middle name? And then we came upon the name Zahir, which means to radiate. And I was like, perfect. Again, Bethel means the house of God. So here we are expecting a little fiery angel to radiate our lives. Though we thought that would be here on earth, it ended up being a different way. So we get to 14 weeks at the new OB, and they tell us, basically that what happened in my first pregnancy, the chances of that happening again is very slim. I had sworn off statistics before then, and so I said, okay, I'm going to trust these statistics because everything else so far has been perfect. He told us to come back at 16 weeks because now that they've checked everything with the baby, they want to check my cervix and just see how my cervix is doing. And if at that point my cervix is a-okay, then we could proceed on to our anatomy scan and go on with the pregnancy as normal. So we get to 16 weeks, and my husband looked a little concerned. I kept quiet because I'd been panicked the whole pregnancy. And the doctor that I was seeing this time, he's very even, monotone, no expression, very much like the Clear Eyes guy. Like he answered your question, not a whole lot of explanation, just very straightforward. So I was like, okay. And so my husband asked him, he said, looks like the baby's balled up. And the doctor proceeded to say, oh, that's fine. Everything looks good, but I want you to also schedule an additional appointment to your anatomy scan on the same day so we can check your cervix again. Me trying not to panic, I'm going back to the original conversation where he said if everything looks good, we would move forward and everything will be fine. So I was in my mind kind of concerned with, okay, why are you checking it again? But I was like, at this point, the baby's fine. I'm just going to go with it. So we leave, and I noticed, I'm one of those people that I read everything. So I noticed that in my aftercare paperwork, the measurement of my cervix was about 2.8. And it's either millimeters or centimeters. I forget how the cervix measures though. So please correct me in the comments. I'm just gonna say for the sake of this video, it was centimeters, okay? And I go to Dr. Google because Google is just what you want to do when you're 16 weeks pregnant and you're scared of everything. You go to Dr. Google so he can scare you some more. And according to Dr. Google, at my gestation, my cervix should be measuring somewhere between 3.5 centimeters and 4.5. So in my head, I was panicking, but in my heart, I told myself, Shalika, you've been panicking this whole pregnancy. You're not gonna panic anymore. So that was a Wednesday. 2 days later, I started to notice that I had pressure at the bottom of my stomach, mainly when I went to use the restroom. And so, me, being on all those pregnancy apps, I figured, okay, this is just something new in pregnancy. Again, I'm not going to panic, is what I said. It had gone on all day, all night. And I remember my beautician at the time saying, Shalika, you want to get checked out? And I was like, no, I'm fine. My husband said, Shalika, you want to go to the hospital? No, I'm fine. We go to the Cheesecake Factory that night, and, I'm just enjoying my life. We're talking about our baby. And my husband decides to go out with my brother, and I was frustrated because I wanted him home, and I was hormonal and all of that stuff. And I thought that maybe the doctor had told me not to have penetration, but I thought maybe we could do other things. So I was a little bit frustrated. While he was out, I laid in the bed, and I started to feel, it wasn't a pain, but it was just a constant something going on, not quite sure what it was. I started to go on Dr. Google again and look up contractions. And what was described on the website was similar to what I was feeling, but it wasn't like intense. And so I was like, what if I'm having some sort of Braxton Hicks episode? Let me check it out. I had this pressure all day. Now I'm having what might be contractions, but I'm not sure. I said, and the cool thing was I lived down the street from the emergency room. It wasn't like the full hospital, but at least, somebody could look at me right away. It was always, quiet, not very busy. So I knew I could get in and out. So I said, all right, I'm just going to go to the emergency room. I text my husband and said, hey, I don't want you to alarm Shane. That's my brother. I said, but I'm just going to get this checked out. I get to the hospital, and the nurses, whenever you complain about any type of pain or anything going on, and you tell them you're pregnant and they confirm you're pregnant, the first thing they do is get that fetal monitor thing so that they can look for a heartbeat. That's usually first place they go, at least in my experience. So the first nurse had a little bit of trouble finding a heartbeat. And I was getting super annoyed with her because I'm like, this has not in the past been a hard thing for people. So I'm going to need for you to find it. Eventually, another nurse comes in. She finds the heartbeat. Heartbeat was, in my opinion, a little bit higher than what it had been in the past, but no need for alarm for me at that point. The doctor comes in and looks at my baby on the ultrasound, and as usual, he's moving, he's having a good time, living his best life. She says, all right, baby looks good. Miss Bethel, I'm going to check your cervix. So she goes in and she looks, of course, she looks in my vagina and she looks at my cervix. And she says, Miss Bethel, I can't see your cervix. At that point, I'm like, what do you mean you can't see my cervix? My cervix has been in the same spot it's always been. She says there's I can't remember how she described it. I don't know if she called it a bubble. She definitely at that point didn't call it a bag, but she said something was covering my cervix. And that she needed to call the main hospital and speak to an OB. So I'd also let them know, and they looked at my records about, my previous pregnancies. So they said, you know what? For precautions, we're going to keep you on the bed. We're not going to let you get up. Just in case, something similar were to happen like your first pregnancy. We just want you to lay here and relax. They call the OB. The OB advises her to transport me to the main hospital. At this point, it was pretty clear that my cervix had opened, because she said that what she hoped would happen is that I would get there and they're able to do an emergency cerclage, and that I can just spend the rest of my pregnancy on bed rest. Scared, but holding on to a little bit of hope, I said, if that's the option I got to go with, I'm fine with that. So they transport me in the ambulance. So this is my second ambulance ride. They transport me in the ambulance to the main hospital here in Raleigh. And it was different. It wasn't the same hospital I went to before. They're in the same family, just different locations. So husband follows behind. They get me to the triage area. I tell them how far along that I am, or how far along I think I am. And the doctor looks on the ultrasound, and he says to me, and my husband, Mr. and Mrs. Bethel, I'm sorry, but your baby is already starting to come down the birth canal. And at this gestation, there's nothing we can do to save it. I totally went blank. I wasn't there. My husband was there, and I can't remember if he yelled or his reaction was hard. And I felt so guilty because there was nothing I could do. I couldn't ease his pain. I couldn't make it better. I couldn't change this. This was going to happen, and there was nothing we could do about it. As I mentioned, my husband had been out earlier with my brother, so we were kind of trying to go back and forth on whether or not to let him know that night or let him know the next morning. My mother was coming in town the next day to hang out with all of us, since, it was very rare that we would all be at the same place at the same time. I had called her that night, but I'm thankful that I didn't get in touch with her, because I can't imagine her having to drive 2 hours to see us with that news on her brain. So they wheeled us to a room. I had called another friend. She was up. She came to the hospital right away and talked to me and my husband, and we were just heartbroken. I detached, and my husband was very much present, going through everything. As I mentioned, I think in the other video, my husband's from Georgia. All his family's in Georgia, so he called them and let them know once the next day rolled around and it was an appropriate hour. And everybody wanted to be hopeful and say, hey, guys, it's not over yet. You don't know what God would do. He could turn this around for you. And as much as I wanted to believe that at that point, I knew that this end would be very familiar to the loss of our son, Amari. So I just was in protect everyone around me mode. Once my mom got to Raleigh, my brother informed her of what happened. I can't remember what point we were able to inform him, but he was at the hospital and he was giving her directions on how to get to the hospital. Mom comes to the room and, we let her know what happened. Her, my brother, and my husband go out to talk. And I remember my husband letting out a yell. And when they came back in the room, excuse me, guys. When they came back in the room, I could tell that my mom and brother were trying not to cry in front of me, but it was apparent that they had been crying. So, the nurses were really nice. The doctor was nice. They were like, Mr. and Mrs. Bethel, whenever you're ready, we won't rush you to induce. We'll induce you whenever you're ready. They kept monitoring me. They kept monitoring the baby. And they just went from there. So somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock, my husband and I came to terms that we were going to have to deliver. So we told them to induce. They gave me the suppository. I forget the name of it, but they gave me the suppository to induce my labor. And labor, well, I'd been in labor all day, but labor got real. And I remember before the pain really hit, they said, Mrs. Bethel, would you like to take an epidural? Me knowing that I was 16 weeks pregnant, I'm like, what do I need an epidural for? Relying on the way things happened before and not really feeling much pain until after, I was like, no, I don't want it. Labor was hard. Okay. Whether you're 16 weeks pregnant, 39 weeks pregnant, labor pain is labor pain. And I was having pains every 15 minutes. But the medicine that they gave me in my IV to help with the pain, I could only get it once, I think once every 30 minutes or once an hour. And those pains were coming. I remember at points I wouldn't scream, but I would moan really, really loud, and my mom would either come to the bed or my husband would come to the bed, and stuff was real. It was real. Finally, after, not knowing if the baby was going to come, because it seemed like he was just he had started to come, but he was kind of like stuck. He wasn't coming all the way out. They thought they were going to have to give me an abortion pill, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, if he's coming, I want him to come alive. I'm already struggling with the fact that I'm the reason my baby has to die. I'm not going to kill him. So they didn't do that. They didn't have me sign that paper, but eventually I started to feel him pressing in my vaginal canal. And I called the doctor. I had the doctor come in and I said, I can feel my baby. So they said, Mrs. Bethel, push. I believe it was maybe 1 or 2 pushes. And Aiden was born. They said, it's a boy. I knew that. My husband knew that. They handed him to my husband, and from my husband's recollection, our baby boy lived about 30 seconds. And he was fighting on his way out. They asked if we wanted to name him, and we named him Aiden Zahir. He weighed about 4 ounces, a little over 4 ounces, and he was about 7 about 7 inches long. He was the most precious thing I had seen, and I decided that this baby I was going to see, and I was going to know more about him, because not knowing much about Amari had haunted me. So the chaplain comes in, and it was actually two chaplains. The first chaplain comes in, and bless her heart, she was in tears. And the mother in me wanted her to be okay. So I was like, ma'am, don't cry. It's okay. We're okay. My baby's in heaven. I asked her if she was a believer. She said she was, and to this day, I can't remember the scripture God gave me, and I pray that I do remember it so I can tell you guys about it. But we went to that scripture. I had her pray that over us. The second chaplain came in, and they got Aiden's handprints, his footprints. They gave him a blanket, a hat, a box for his, they did a mold of his feet. They gave him a box for his feet, and everything we could have on Aiden, we had. They took pictures. I look at those pictures to this day, and my baby boy looks like my dad and my husband. Has my dad's ears, my husband's side profile. He was definitely the perfect Bethel Boyd mix. Things didn't happen without complication, though. Again, placenta struggled to come out, and they had to do an emergency D&C, because at one point when the doctor went to get the placenta out, I began to bleed, and I lost a lot of blood. So they rushed me into the OR. They rushed me into the OR. I had my D&C. I woke up, they wheeled me back to my room, and they told me that they needed to monitor my blood count, because I lost so much blood, and that, I may have to stay for a couple days. The good thing was I didn't have to rush into any decisions on Aiden, because they allowed him to stay in the hospital room with us while we were there. And that was the most healing experience, because I got a chance to talk to him. I got a chance to see him. My mom and brother saw him. My friends that visited the hospital, my cousin, they were able to see him, and they were able to see that I had a real baby. Like, I could tell people that I really had a baby, because I didn't have any proof of it with my first pregnancy. I just had the memories. But I ended up having to stay 3 days, and on the second day they had to give me a blood transfusion, because my blood count was still really low. That was July 16th, 2016, and I stayed until the 19th. They sent me home, and the second part of my grief journey began. Being obsessed with just knowing my child and proving that I was pregnant, I was in a really, really, really deep, dark place. If I thought losing Amari had rocked my world, losing Aiden rocked it even more, because With Amari, I felt like there was nothing I could do. But with Aiden, I felt like this is my fault. I should have saved him. I should have went to the doctor sooner. I should have asked more questions. I should have relaxed more. You guys know how that goes. You know, we blame ourselves. We carry that burden. But yeah, 3 years later, I can say I am a functioning grieving mother. How I get to work every morning, I don't know. How I wake up every morning, I don't know. But as I continue my journey, and as I recall different parts of my journey that I share with you, I just want you to know that we're in this together. I'm still grieving. Finding the strength to do this video took about a month and a half. Or to even start these pages, it took about a month and a half. But I'm here, and the goal is to provide love and support to women like me. We'll talk about not just women, but men and women like me, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, whoever needs the support. That's what this page is for. And we'll talk about different topics as they come across. But overall, Amari and Aiden's story will be shared so that people can experience love and empathy as they go through their own growth and grief loss. One thing, whether you're new or old in this community, and I say old meaning it's been some years, or it's been some time since your loss. One thing you will learn is that unless you give your baby a voice, unless you speak their name, a lot of people won't. So that's what this page is for. I speak of and plan to speak of Amari and Aiden as if they lived, because they did, Maybe not outside the womb, but they were growing in my body just like, any other baby. So their lives matter just as much. And I want you to know that your child matters, their life matters, and you have a support, you have a friend in me. I pray that as we partner together, we're able to bring awareness to the medical community on how to deal with families that go through this. And also, our Christian faith, or whatever your faith is, just how teaching people, not how, like, you can't teach people to being empathetic, but you can teach them when empathy is needed. So I pray that this page does just that. This is going to be the last video of tonight. I pray my story helps. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Share your story. And follow my IG page, I Am Still Mom. Facebook page, Lika Bethel. And there's also a group called I Am Still Mom on Facebook. And welcome to the I Am Still Mom YouTube page. I pray that it's beneficial to you. Good night.